This week on To the Contrary.
First, women's groups weigh in on Neil Gorsuch. Then, the president's defense of Bill O'Reilly as women talk about sexual harassment in the workplace. And, less than 3 months into the Trump presidency, how he's faring on executive orders that impact the underserved.
Bay. Welcome to the Contrary, a discussion of news and social trends from diverse perspectives. Up first, women's rights and the Supreme Court.
The battle over Neil Gorsuch's Supreme Court ascension. What impact will his confirmation have on laws affecting underserved communities? More than 150 women's organizations wrote to the Senate opposing Gorsuch. They said his views and judicial record threaten women's empowerment, from abortion rights to health care access, Title IX to workplace discrimination, and LGBTQ rights. The National Women's Law Center charges, quote, while he has not opined on Roe v. Wade directly, he voted to override a woman's coverage of contraception if her boss objected, end quote. They add, Gorsuch will make it harder to use the laws that have literally opened the doors of opportunity for women, girls, and people of color. Supporters say Gorsuch is exceptionally qualified and his background and character are unimpeachable.
So, Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeever, how activist a justice will Neil Gorsuch be, and how will that affect women's rights?
I am concerned that once he is on the bench, his rulings will be really of detriment to women and people of color everywhere.
When he met with President Trump, he said that there was no talk of overturning Roe v. Wade, and he would have left if there were. So I think we should take the man at his word. He's not going to do that.
People are calling him Scalia 2.0, and I think we should be very worried and expect the worst for women.
He won't be an activist. He's an originalist. He wants to interpret the law, call balls and strikes, and let the legislature sort it out.
Well, you know, I covered the court for 10 years, and all Republicans say they're not activists, and they call the Democratic justices activists. But in fact, Republicans are just as activist about dismantling things that they don't want to call precedent, but it is changing the law. And how much of that do you think he will be doing? You think he won't change any precedent?
Well, I mean, it's part of his job to examine what's before him and see if it is being carried out the way that the Congress passed it, whether it's a Congress of now with our norms and values or a Congress in the past. And he said that publicly. So I think he will adhere to that, similar to how John Roberts did, which led to a very controversial on the right decision on Obamacare.
So do you think that that means that he will be an activist justice if he sees a law that he thinks isn't being carried out the way Congress intended, although Congress did pass it, that he will then, as a justice, overturn it?
I think it's how the law is being applied that he will interpret, but I don't think he'll be an activist in trying to shape society through that interpretation.
Well, to me, you know, if we were talking about being an originalist, I am very concerned with that type of personality, because the Constitution in its original form meant that I was 3/5 of a human being. And so when we're talking
and
about...
it also didn't talk about airplanes or Wi-Fi.
Absolutely. And of course, women weren't even weren't allowed to own property, you know, all of the very problematic, let's be very real, in terms of what the Constitution was in its original form. And so when we're talking about someone interpreting today's law and today's implications based on what the founders, what they wanted when that Constitution was written, to me that is an all-out assault on every gain that women and people of color have been able to achieve subsequently.
Do you expect to see Roe overturned?
I think that it's very much imperiled, and we know that this was one of the main sort of campaign promises that Trump ran around the country vaulting, that he would in fact appoint someone to the bench who would overturn Wade. I believe it's in danger.
I think that's all political talk. I think Gorsuch is a man who is shaped by a lot of the Western philosophies, Western Republican philosophies that you see in people like him. In Colorado, Western Republicans are not quick to act. He's got his own temperament. He's somebody who's going to color within the letter of the law. And I think that's really big. You're not saying somebody who's trying to be a rock star judge here. He's not carrying Trump's water. Let's put it that way. And I trust that he will look at everything and take some time with it and not really follow through with what Trump promised on the campaign trail.
But then look at his track record on what he's done with women. I feel like you should always trust women. We
Talk
really
about
are.
that.
You know, the way that he supported the Hobby Lobby court case. So I think, and I think that, you know, we are really the canaries in the mine. If women are worried about somebody rolling back on our rights, we should be worried. We should all be worried.
Well, if we're going to trust women, Senator Claire McCaskill was recorded telling donors that he was one of the better justices that they could have hoped for. And I know that in the process of the confirmations, Democrats on the Hill were really, in a sense, looking for reasons to oppose him, probably related to Merrick Garland not being approved. But that tells
Well,
me
how much was turnabout is fair play in that regard? Because you raised it. I was going to get to it, but you know, Republicans talked about, well, was the Scalia seat, as if a particular party has ownership over any seat on the court, and yet, you know, Merrick Garland was nominated almost a year before President Obama left office, and the Republicans just played politics to the hilt and didn't let his his nomination come to the floor for a vote.
Well, politics is definitely the name of the game, and even choosing Merrick Garland as the nominee was a political move on the part of President Obama. So as far as whether somebody can own a seat, no, I don't believe that. But I do believe that if you're going to maintain a status quo and not be disruptive, you keep the current makeup of the court the way that it has been.
Would you be
That's
saying that
really
if it were 5 or 6 majority Democrat?
Well, I think every party is always going to be going for that point. I mean, that's the point of politics. You try to get what you can get, and on this one, they were outmaneuvered.
Let's just say the last time that we had a liberal majority on the Supreme Court, I was 2 years old. So this idea about maintaining the status quo, what really we're talking about is the Republicans are saying we want to produce a permanent majority of conservatives on the highest court in the land. And that to me is an all-out assault on people of color, on women, on the LGBTQ community, on anyone.
Do you see them, if Congress so does, you know, upholding, stripping away food stamps, stripping away aid to poor families, to use all those programs?
I think they are all imperiled. I think that the crazy ban that this particular person in charge wants to push through is really
the crazy ban. You mean talking about immigration?
The Muslim ban, for example. I believe that he wants people on the Supreme Court that will basically ratify all of his sort of crazy musings and his orders, and that is really what he's doing. He's stacking the court. That court doesn't belong to the Republicans. It doesn't belong to Democrats. This seat was stolen. Let's never forget that. Merrick Garland, in fact, was a consensus appointee in that he was very moderate. And so even if the Republicans wouldn't even do him the honor of just talking to him or meeting with him, much less holding a hearing, that shows us that they are the king and queens of political morandering, and it is basically they stole that seat not only from President Obama, they stole it from the American people.
Let's look at the reality here. 15 years ago, Chuck Schumer started this fight. Mitch McConnell just finished it. We're not great students of history anymore when we don't realize that the first fully partisan filibuster was started by Schumer 15 years ago with Miguel Estrada, who was being nominated as D.C. Circuit Court. I think that's very interesting because McConnell, he's not doing something different. What he did with the nuclear option, that's not different. Schumer started the fight with the partisan filibuster.
But I want to point to a lifetime appointment.
I want to point to something, a point that I want to make here, which is we're all being honest about that this is a partisan fight. And yet when they put Supreme Court justices through the confirmation process, they're supposed to be neutral, they're supposed to be nonpartisan, they're not supposed to have any opinions. And it is such, I would say, an abdication of justice to pretend during the process that they're not political when they're extremely political.
It's a new age of partisan
And why
politics.
does that keep going?
It keeps going because this has become the norm up there because of leaders like Schumer and McConnell, and I frankly can't wait for the day that both of them are gone because I think this is really dangerous. What makes you think their
replacements would be any different?
Because these fights, I think I have great faith in the political system. Let's just put it that way. I'm optimistic that there will be consensus builders in this next generation because things have gotten so ugly up there there. It's a he said, she said thing, and I'm a Republican who thinks that Merrick Garland at least deserved a hearing. That fight I was talking about 15 years ago, that was the first ever partisan filibuster, and that started 15 years back. These guys and gals don't want to agree. They want to really ram things down the throats of their colleagues.
People who want to agree with each other. That's the real problem. The problem is the voters, not the members of Congress. They're elected by people on the, they're elected in some places by the KKK, and they're elected in others by the ACLU. I mean,
but do we think it's also so disturbing how the Republicans kind of pushed through his confirmation? I mean, getting rid of the filibuster, changing the rules. I feel like it was really shady. I mean, talk about politics. They just didn't want to have a discussion about it anymore.
Schumer started it.
Well, and I actually
but that sounds so childish.
I worked for McConnell in 2004 when the Estrada thing was going on, and I don't find it shady. I actually can tell you he exercised a lot of restraint in not exercising the nuclear option under George W. Bush, and he did consider it. There were briefings about what that procedural reality would look like, and you can pull tape of then Minority Leader Harry Reid on the floor of the Senate talking about how it would be so horrible to change the Senate that way until he became the Majority Leader, and then he did it. So it's not shady, it's politics.
I mean, conservatives were mad at McConnell. Let's not forget that he didn't evoke filibuster for Sotomayor and Kagan.
Right.
People were really mad, and McConnell didn't do it.
Thank you. This was great, but we got to go on to the next topic. Let us know what you think. Please follow me on Twitter at Bonnie Urbay. From the Supreme Court to sexual harassment.
As of late this week, media outlets reported some 52 advertisers had pulled their ads from host Bill O'Reilly's Fox News cable show and his radio show. The defections came in reaction to a series of reports by the New York Times detailing harassment allegations against him by 5 women who settled against O'Reilly and his employer for a total of $13 million. Midweek, the National Organization for Women called for his firing by Fox News, and President Trump stepped into the middle of this scandal by telling reporters, "I don't think Bill did anything wrong."
No, he was asked a question, but nobody told him he had to respond. And I'm just wondering what was going through his mind. I mean, as if American women didn't already know that his mind is somewhere back in the 50s when it comes to women's rights. What prompted him to say, Bill's a good person, he didn't do anything wrong?
Who knows? It's the day, it's the mood. Nobody knows. But it's really that the president's base, the base that elected him, are fervent viewers of Fox News, and so he felt perhaps some obligation to come out sort of defending one of theirs. I've been a guest on the O'Reilly Factor twice now, never with Bill. And I have to say, look, things are what they are. I've heard stories from inside the network. It's disturbing, just as a woman, to hear that women have been sexually harassed. And now in this latest allegation, the woman isn't seeking money even. She's really, I think, seeking revenge. And I think it's great. I think the stuff needs to come out, and the network needs to really face the music.
How long do you think he has? Forever?
O'Reilly? Look, I mean, this is a big thing. He's the #1 cable news show, I guess, for 16 years is what they tout on their opening credits.
But his ratings have gone up.
Right. Because people love controversy. I think that's the thing. The network will protect him. They protect their own for a very long time. So it's really anyone's guess. President Trump made it. He managed to make it through the general election with such terrible stories coming out at the end. So I think we're still living in this age where men are protected by great corporate. I mean, if you have money, you will be protected. And I think that's a very sad reality we live in.
Yeah. It's not disturbing. It's disgusting. And let me tell you why Donald Trump spoke up. He spoke up because he was like, hey, he's not a bad guy. He's just like me. Yes. That's why he spoke up. And the reason that the network is protecting O'Reilly is because even though advertisers are pulling out, no pun intended, his ratings are not going down. And just because it's happening and it's normal doesn't make it okay. There is something called sexism and misogyny, and it's real, and it's not just O'Reilly. It's the entire network. They're all under investigation. I mean, it's disgusting. Fox has got to go. I'm going to quote Maxine Waters, who is my new shero. They belong in jail, the both of them.
Well, I mean, on Maxine Waters, I think it's disturbing that she was calling for him to be put in jail without any charges having been filed, without any trial. I mean, maybe she was just making a show for that reason, but I don't think that's a value we can get behind.
Well, maybe she was responding to the nasty thing he said about her hair the week before.
So you criticize my hair, you should be in jail. Like, I still think we have a process.
I'm just saying, you make one outrageous comment, I'll come back at you with
an outrageous comment. I do think it was strategically not smart for Trump to speak out, and he's not the first president who's gotten in trouble for that. President Obama famously weighed in on Henry Louis Gates being arrested or questioned by the police, and then had to have the beer summit. And I would have hoped that people would learn there are things that are not worth presidential scrutiny, and you have to keep in mind that you represent the entire nation, and this is definitely in that category of something you just don't need to weigh in on.
Well, the difference is that the police did act stupidly in that situation, which is what the president said. When someone is arrested for breaking into their own damn home, that's kind of stupid.
He didn't have the facts at that point, though.
Yes, he did. And I would also say that as it relates to this particular case, this is not the first time. I mean, how many instances and how many millions of dollars will they pay out to protect a serial sexual harasser? Let's just say who he is. Yeah. He is a serial sexual harasser. And the reason why the president didn't see anything, oh my God, that's the first time I've used that term with him. The reason why he did not see anything wrong with that behavior is because it's his behavior. Yeah. He's the same one who said that it's okay to just grab a woman by her genitals. So if he's all right himself being a sexual predator, he's going to protect other sexual predators. And that's exactly what he did with
Also, Trump forgot that conservative women at fault here for defending Trump.
Oh, I wouldn't say they're at fault for defending. I think they voted for the guy because they thought he was going to do a good job in the Oval for them. I think that's the reality.
And are they still thinking he is?
I think a lot of people are dropping off, especially after the Syria airstrikes on Thursday night. So I think that's really scary, probably for the Trump administration, is that they're losing some of their base because of their actions. But here's the reality. Again, let's go back to the fall. Why wasn't the Access Hollywood video? Why weren't these numerous women coming forward and giving their stories to the New York Times and other media outlets? Why wasn't that enough to deter conservative women from voting for Mr. Trump? We just live in an age where certain things are okay, and I think they're able to look past them. So I don't think conservative women should be, pinned with the guilt of sort of, you voted for this guy, live with it. I think conservative women in general will see that they were sold a bill of goods, and they will be disappointed. A lot of them are having buyer's remorse. We just don't know the numbers as yet.
It's also National Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I mean, Trump. I just can't get over it. He announced this. He's like, yeah, let's, it's Sexual Assault and Prevention Month, okay? And then he's like, this guy who's assaulting women and getting, accused of it, he's a great guy. I mean, oh my goodness. I just don't know. But, Van Jones said the other night, and it really hit home with me that
on CNN.
That Bill Clinton, what a slip, that President Trump has thrown Republican women really under the bus. I mean, these are the women that came out, in droves, supported him, won the election for him, and here he is being like, yeah, people that harass you at work, they're fantastic, they're great guys, just like me.
And where do you think it'll end up with Bill O'Reilly?
Well,
where should it end up?
Well, I think it's good that the market is being allowed to weigh in with advertisers dropping off, and I think every company has to decide what's appropriate for my brand. But I think possibly with viewers ratings increasing, it may not be enough for action to be taken, and I think it is important that Fox investigate these claims, definitely.
And reportedly they are using tapes of Donald Trump and the tape that you were referring to with Billy Bush, where he said those unbelievable things in sexual harassment training sessions at Fox News. What do you think about that?
Well, it's unbelievable in some ways, but it makes sense that they would do that. With that, I mean, Donald Trump didn't actually harass the woman he got off the bus to meet. What he said was completely unacceptable, but maybe they see some parallel there. It certainly doesn't help their brand when they have their other shows defending those comments and saying it wasn't a big deal, and then their HR department believes something different.
Well, there's obviously something wrong with the culture there, because not only do we have these continuous sexual harassment claims, right now Fox is also being sued by 3 different black women in terms of racial harassment. So there's all sorts of dysfunction going on at Fox.
And it starts at the very top. I mean, hello, Roger Ailes. I mean,
well, now that he's gone, and by the way, now that Rupert Murdoch's sons James and Lachlan, who are supposed to be, they hide their politics very, very adeptly, but allegedly it's been reported that they are way more progressive than their father. How is that going to affect what happens to Bill O'Reilly's future? Bill O'Reilly's future?
Yeah, I mean, these sons may just decide that enough is enough, because they've heard enough, and they don't want that to be the controversy anymore. I think the one thing here, the whole thing of it all, is that Donald Trump and Bill O'Reilly share one thing in common, and this is something I heard as I traveled across the United States last fall. They're entertainers. They are entertainers, they're sensationalists, and a lot of people are able to look past things. So that is going to be the challenge for the Murdoch sons.
Except that Donald Trump is out of reality TV now.
Well,
so anyway, there's a whole new level of reality.
He is our cable news president.
From harassment charges to executive orders.
In less than 80 days in office, President Trump has issued executive orders that progressives say turn back hard-won women's rights and diversity rights. Advocates say, starting with reinstating the Mexico City rule to defunding the UN Population Fund, which promotes family planning in more than 150 poor countries, to this week, rolling back workplace protections for women employed by federal contractors, the president is using the executive order to harm women. The administration says the president wants to empower women. He's invited women entrepreneurs to the White House and signed 2 orders that support women entrepreneurs in the STEM fields. Advocates say he put no money behind those programs, so they're meaningless.
So how would he's setting up some events or photo ops for Women's Sexual Assault Awareness Months, including the STEM bills, executive orders. How meaningful are they?
They're not meaningful at all. I think President Trump we have to take him at his actions. It's like he rolls back, he reinstates the global gag rule, he takes away all funding from UNFPA. He's not only after rolling back women's rights and protections in America, but around the world. And I feel like the more we see Ivanka, the more worried we should be about what he's actually doing in terms of formulating policy towards women, because she is nothing more than the administration's most effective PR tool, especially when it comes to women. She can tweet out her hashtag, women who work as much as she wants, but she needs to turn around and look at her father and what he's doing for women.
And how much is that getting that information or that perspective getting through to conservative women whom you're training to run for office?
It isn't trickling down quite yet, really, with the repercussions of his actions are right now. This administration is very new. They're not really, the outreach is, in my opinion, quite poor at this point. Ivanka, as we know, just less than 10 days ago became a federal employee, of course, one that is not getting a salary. The shakeups over there just leave us guessing. And I think just as a woman, forget, right or left or wherever I am on the political spectrum, I am concerned about, what we're doing for women here domestically. I think internationally people are sort of thinking, well, okay, maybe there's waste in these programs, and that's why the president and his administration are slashing these programs. And let's focus on the women here. But when we see certain things that are going to affect our population here, a woman in Iowa just the same as a woman in Florida as in New York, we have to grow concerned. Conservative women are not really, we're not quick with it right now, because we have the messaging out of the White House is so confusing. So I think it'll take some time to land on the ears and let us understand how we can have a better role to really make some gains with women across the aisle and have protections and policies that help all women, all American women.
I'm wondering what you see is filtering to, because most women, even most women voters, don't closely follow the news.
Right.
So are they just seeing, from out of the corner of their eye, something on TV that he's there doing something with women and thinking, oh, great, he supports women? Or are they really listening and finding out what exactly it is that his programs are for women?
That's a good question. Excellent. And my fear is that they're more fascinated with the window dressing and not really being able to look behind and see exactly what's going on behind the curtain. I mean, I will give him one thing. He's an excellent marketer. He understands how to market. So he understands how to produce visuals that send a message. But when you look at substance, it's not there. So, for example, we just had Equal Pay Day. On the very same day, he rescinded actions that President Obama put in place that required federal contractors to be able to report what they paid men as compared to women. The best way to root out unequal equal pay is to make employers become transparent about how they're paying people and whether or not they're paying people equally. He's made that much more possible by rescinding that action. So he can say everything that he wants.
You just spoke a truth. But it took you about 3 minutes to get there to describe what it was that President Obama had done.
Right.
These are difficult. You can't just say you're fired.
Right.
You know, you have to explain these issues, and people aren't listening.
Yeah.
So what do Democrats need to do to get out there and make sure that they are paying attention to more details?
That's a great point. This is one of the things that's been my pet peeve with Democrats for decades, is that we don't understand how to use marketing to get out a message
Not
so
even
that people
marketing,
get it.
it's like sound bites. Here's
Sound
We
bites.
are out of
Exactly.
time. I'm sorry. Here's my soundbite. We're out of time. That's it for this edition. Please follow me on Twitter and visit our website, pbs.org/to the contrary. And whether you agree or think to the contrary, see you next week.